With praise from both sides of the aisle, the spotlight is on John Durham as we await his report. Who could be caught up in this expanding probe? Let's bring in host of Left Coast News, Ethan Bearman, and Fox News legal analyst Gregg Jarrett, also the author of Witch Hunt. Great to have you both with us, gentlemen.
Good to be here.
Hi, Shannon.
Okay, so let's, from the National Review today, this piece about Durham says, if Durham comes back with an indictment, he's extremely likely to get and sustain a conviction. And if he chooses not to press charges, it probably means that no prosecutor could sustain a conviction based upon the available evidence. I mean, Greg, it sounds like folks think he's a straight shooter pretty much down the middle.
Yeah, he totally is, and everybody, even Democrats, recognize that and have said so. I think now that it's turned into a criminal investigation, that suggests to me as a lawyer that he's probably found some fairly persuasive evidence of lawlessness and corrupt acts, and I suspect it's directly related to the Inspector General's report, which surely Durham has by now. And I think we're going to find out that all 4 of the FISA warrants were illegally obtained. So the people who signed off on that, the people who prepared it, who may have deceived the judges, concealed vital evidence, and maybe perpetrated a fraud on the court, could be held accountable by Durham.
I see Ethan already shaking his head.
Well, that's quite the assumption regarding the FISA warrants, because if Gregg Jarrett had insight into the FISA warrants directly themselves, we would have a very serious national security issue on our hands, because that is a security court. So here's the deal. Durham himself, of course, has a great reputation, just like Robert Mueller has a great reputation. What's tainting this already, though, is we have an attorney general who is acting more like a protector of a child king, a boy king, than he is actually serving as the attorney general for the United States of America, for we the people. So there's a question, is he coloring this investigation? We're going to need the transparency. We were going to want all the transcripts at the end, just like we're wanting out of the Mueller report and what is happening in the House right now. And again, I just want to point out, the reason I say that about Attorney General Barr is because he misrepresented what Robert Mueller wrote in the report when he gave his summary. That's what makes me suspicious about it.
Because listen, Greg, that accusation has been made. People can now read the Mueller report for themselves, draw their own conclusions. But there was this initial letter that came out from the Attorney General. Did he get it wrong?
No, he didn't get it wrong. He got it totally right. I devoted the longest chapter of my book to explaining how he got it right and how Mueller and his team actually got it wrong by contorting the law and twisting the facts. And as to the FISA warrant applications, a year ago, those applications, with some redactions, were made public. So that's another part of my book in which I go through them and explain how the judges were deceived, and 6 different pieces of evidence that were concealed and misrepresented. So that would be, by logical extent, a misrepresentation and a potential fraud on the court.
Okay, I want to get to you guys, too, because we could relitigate that a lot. But there's so many things happening today, so I want to ask you about a couple of newer things. There were no shows today for these depositions. We don't know if others, including John Bolton, are going to show up later this week. But here's what Adam Schiff, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, had to say. He said there's evidence of obstruction when these people don't show up, and he also said this.
Then we may infer by the White House obstruction here that their testimony would be further incriminating of the president.
I want a quick comment from you both. Ethan, I'll start with you. I mean, he says it's evidence if they don't show up of obstruction, and we can infer that their testimony would be bad for the president. Fair of him to say that?
Well, if it's not a valid executive privilege, then yes, it would be obstruction, which is what, again, President Trump is very busy doing and was evidenced in the Mueller report.
Okay. Greg, final word to you. Is that evidence of obstruction and...
No, it's if you're exercising executive privilege, you have every right to do it. It gets litigated. It gets litigated in the court. And there are other privileges as well. If you defy a court order, then it would be obstruction of justice. But it's silly for Schiff, and he's completely wrong to claim it's an impeachable offense of obstruction of Congress simply to invoke executive privilege. That's nonsense.
Article 2 of the Nixon impeachment was specifically regarding obstruction of Congress, Gregg Jarrett. That's what was in Article 2 of the impeachment documents against Richard Nixon. So, no, that's not ridiculous. There's precedent for this. You can't go interfere and directly block Congress's Article 1 duties.
Quick final word, Greg. We got to go, but I'll give you a chance to respond.
I think it'll be up to the courts if Schiff wants to pursue it. And then we'll wait and see and have this argument.
And some of this is the Democrats saying they're not going to waste their time in the courts. He said that, but we're going to go ahead and add it to the obstruction charge. So we'll see. A lot of this is going to get litigated. But in the meantime, we have a couple of great legal eagles of our own. So Greg and Ethan, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Shannon.